I'd like to call the meeting to order. Has there been a declaration of public notice? No. That's yours? Yes, thank you. All right, the first order of business is the school board reorganization. And for the election of president, the superintendent will preside.
Okay. So we'll begin the procedures. Just to clarify, you have your materials. Of course, the statutes dictate the process as well as your local board policy. And so the first order is to accept nominations for the position of board president.
Request paper ballots.
Okay, so for board policy, request is made to have paper ballots for nominations. Okay, so each of the board members have blank ballots in front of you. And so if you would use one, this is for the nomination, this would be the yellow ballot. And in this case, you're simply requesting nominations for the office of president. So if you would submit your nominations, and then Jared, would you collect those?
She gives us.
How many people can I get to nominate? I got 3 nominations.
I know.
She'll
In case-
record
she
just the
figures we
names
might
of
mess up.
individuals that received nominations first.
There's multiple nomination papers.
Thanks.
Because she assumes we might mess up.
What's that?
She assumes we might mess up.
Oh, okay.
She does that every year. She gives us like
She assumes we might mess up.
Okay, fair enough.
3 times. Yeah. She knows it.
She was great copy.
The audience is on edge.
She must have used a whole box.
Okay, we received 2 individuals were nominated for the position of president, Andrew Mckinney and Peter Sobel. So at this time, we will vote for the position, and you could use the blue ballot, please, and vote for either candidate, Andrew McKinney or Peter Sobel.
You're doing a hell of a job.
Thank you. What is it? Let's have an extra pen. Pen? Yeah. We have an extra pen.
What do you don't want me to shoot you? Shoot.
Yeah.
Do you want to do that?
We got one, Jay.
Thank you. Okay.
Remember, Jessica never. Carrie likes working.
They love food though.
Okay, the tally of the votes, Andrew McKinney received 4 votes. So McKinney has been elected president. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Oh, you have to change.
Yeah, it's
I
easier
thought that
to
was
preside from that position. There you go.
I gotta take my cookie.
Well, yeah, I'll keep the ballots. You take your mouse.
Okay.
Didn't touch the water.
Thank you.
Just you need it.
All right.
We're on the next page now. They're all essentially the same.
Okay, so now we're going to do the election of the vice president. I need the board president presiding. The chair asks if there's any other nominations for vice president. If there's no more nominations, the state there are no more nominations. Nominations for vice president now closed.
I'd ask for paper ballots for the
Yeah.
nominations for
request made all the elections paper ballot now.
So we have Susan Fox, Eric Parks, Jeff Simpson, and Peter Sobel.
Sit right.
I like to remove my name from Vice President.
All right, Eric decided to remove his from Vice President. So we have Susan Fox, Jeff Simpson, and Peter Sobel.
You have to come back.
I know, I'm slow too.
Sorry.
Yeah.
You monitoring Russian influence in this?
One just emailed me and I told him to stop. We have Susan Fox with 3, Peter and Jeff with 2 each. Susan,
No, we have to vote again.
We have to vote again.
Yeah, because there has to be a majority, so yeah.
We need 4 votes.
Yeah.
so we'll vote again.
Who are the 3?
Me too.
So just to remind everyone, by
From
policy, you
each of
need
them.
a majority of
So you need a
the
majority.
board, and then if there's not the top 2 vote getters, or, but since there's a
they're
tie
three.
there, so it'll be all 3 individuals again, will still be on the ballot.
Three from me, 2 projected to Peter. So nobody had, so there were not 2. 3 and 3. 3, 2, 2. Hold this in. Policy says no. They've got 4. Yeah.
That's me.
I'm not so
Okay.
sure. I don't think so. I think it should be 4. If it comes out the same again, that might be. Because
Again, we have Susan Fox with 3, Peter and Jeff with 2.
okay. So
I withdraw my name in consideration.
Peter Sobel will remove his name, so we'll have Susan Fox and Jeff Simpson.
Right. Who sees and flaws as a majority vote? That's 4. Yeah. It's real. It is. Freshmen.
Okay, Susan Fox has a majority of 4, so it's 3. There's Susan, Vice President. Okay, the chair would like to ask for nominations for treasurer. Paper.
Doesn't really matter which one. They're all the same names.
True.
Well, right. So we have Jeff Simpson, Susan Manning, and Peter Sobel.
I withdraw.
Jeff withdraws from treasurer. So we have Susan Manning and Peter Sobel.
I'm using the vice president.
I think there's only one there. Oh,
Stuff in the ballot box? Yeah, which one? Have to call into question all the votes now.
What?
Dean is stuff in the ballot box.
Nice.
yeah, arrest me after the meeting, though.
I'm having a terrible, I just put in vice president for treasurer and had too much stuff.
I don't know if she probably keep these from here. I was going to
I find she puts them on and put them in the wrong place in the wrong. I feel like it's lazy.
We have Peter with 4, Susan with 3.
Thank you.
Now we move on. I ask for nominations for clerk. Clerk.
Oh,
Whoopsie, that's why she makes the extras.
Put your stuff in the mailbox. I don't believe any of these votes anymore.
What changed? What do you mean?
No, mine, I would agree.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Probably.
At least we don't do other people's stuff. Yeah.
All right. Ed Carts, Susan Manning, and Jeff Simpson.
Okay. So
Withdraw.
so we have to do a nomination again, though.
no.
Yep.
No.
Oh, no, that's right, that's right, I'm sorry, that's right, got it.
But what are the two? Three.
That's Eric Carts, Susan Manning, and Jeff Simpson.
Yeah. It's mostly nitpicking, so. That's,
But I know. But I knew that before, so nothing's. Jared's a big boy.
Jeff has the most votes at 4. Congratulations, Jeff, you're the clerk. All right, thanks for the vote for all of our new officers.
Send it to
We'll
folks.
keep on moving along. Designation of depositories for school funds. Everyone has been able to look at that. So I'd like to move approval of the resolution naming the following institutions as depositories for school funds for the Monona Grove School District: Monona State Bank, Summit Credit Union, PMA Financial Network, Inc., and the statutorily authorized investment options in which they recommend: U.S. Bank and Wisconsin Investment Series Cooperative.
so moved.
Have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries.
School schedule.
Schedule of regular board meetings, dates and locations. We had 2 options. Anyone like to recommend what option we'd like to go with?
I'd like to move approval of 2019-20 board meeting schedule 1, meeting per month proposal as presented.
I'll second that.
Which one?
One for
Could
my,
you say that more slowly?
Yeah.
I would move approval of the schedule 1 meeting per month proposal as presented.
And there was a second.
I'll second.
Okay.
All-
I have a comment.
Let's have a discussion.
Yeah, I thought we had some conversation before about changing whether we did 1 meeting a month or 2, changing the Tuesday, September 10 meeting due to the previously tentatively scheduled Dane County Equity Consortium. We thought it'd be easier for us to change than for you to get all those different superintendents or whoever goes to that.
Yeah.
Or what?
I think the proposal has that moved.
It does.
Oh, it does, I'm sorry.
It says change to, possibly change to 11 because of
to September 11th.
Oh. Oh, well, on mine, I don't look
Yeah,
at it.
we got it.
One?
It just says, yeah, it just says,
Yeah, because the normal would be Wednesday.
oh, it would be Wednesday, I got you, okay, never mind, got it. I saw the red there and thought, yeah, okay. So I don't have a problem with it.
Dan, could you explain why, so when we meet once per month, it's on like July 17th? So the dates in the months, so there were some months in the 2-month one where we only met one.
July was usually one, yeah, and it usually was right.
So there, I just want to make sure that as you look at the one per month, is it always the second
Right.
Wednesday?
So it is always the second Wednesday, except for, with that one exception, as you noted in July. In most recent years, we've gone with the third Wednesday in July. I think part of that is because of the 4th of July holiday, and with only one meeting a month to try to, have it a little bit more in the middle of the month. You certainly could, move it to any Wednesday you'd like. I think the other rationale is with most of the offices closed during that 4th of July week, then the week prior to that would be an opportunity for preparation for that board meeting.
So again, I'm still not getting the full rationale. So for July, on the one per month, it's the 10th. And for the 2 per month, but there's only
Okay,
one in
thank you,
July.
I didn't notice that.
There's at least 2 like that. It's the 17th.
Yeah, so.
And then the 14th matched.
All right, thanks for catching that. I didn't realize that. So the last few years, when the board has had 2 regular meetings per month, the exceptions have been July and December. And so in those 2 months where there was only one, the regular meeting actually moved to the 3rd Wednesday, or the middle of the month. And I think on this sample schedule, with just the one meeting a month, it was put in on the 2nd. I think that was intentional to try to change that. So I guess I would ask the board to consider perhaps.
I would say just let's go with that second Wednesday throughout the year, and that way it'll make it easier to schedule committee meetings and other meetings. We won't have to have special arrangements in December and July.
Yeah.
So I
just leave it
would
on the
support
10th?
this as presented.
Yeah,
Yes.
sounds fine.
Second Wednesday without exception.
Yeah.
This time?
And then sometimes.
Except for
additional-
September because of the Dane County Consortium meeting, which is one day off. I would also note that this calendar schedules the annual meeting for Monday, September 9th. Normally we do it in October, but we've chosen to move it forward this year
Right.
to September.
Right, and just to clarify, the dates in red are for informational purposes only. Those are not regular meetings. Peter mentioned you've already voted on the annual meeting. The other ones, the possible workshops or special meetings, are not regular meetings, and so those would be subject to change.
So I just want to, following Peter's thought process, on the one per month, the date is, there's only one meeting and it's December 11th. On the 2 per month, there's only one meeting in December and it's the 18th. Okay, so it's still going to be the 11th, the second Wednesday.
Right.
Correct. Was the first one we're doing this one.
Okay, so I don't understand why those are different.
Yeah, and after thinking about it, I think the rationale is when we had 2 meetings a month, for those months that there was only one meeting, I think it was kind of, let's split the difference and go the 3rd.
Right.
It does make sense. I agree with what Peter mentioned. If we're going to do just once a month, why wouldn't you stay consistent, then do the 2nd?
Right, makes sense.
Okay, so we
Okay,
had,
those are the only 2 that were different. Okay.
right. So we had a motion and we had a second.
So the motion is
To accept
the second Wednesday
Right.
without exception.
Correct.
Unless there's an exception.
Well, it's the schedule that's presented,
Right,
which is mostly the second Wednesday, except for September because there's a conflict.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay?
Ayes have it, motion carries.
Just so you know, I'm leaving at 10:30.
Well, I think, well, we can always change it if it doesn't work, if this is a trial.
Okay, designation of legal counsel. That's right here on,
I move approval of a resolution naming the following firms as legal counsel for Monona School District: Boardman and Clark, Law Offices, WASB Counsel, Quarles and Brady, DeWitt, Ross and Stevens, SC, Godfrey and Kranz, SC, Strang, Peterson, Renning, Lewis, Lacey, SC, Von Riesen and Roper, SC, and Bulow, Vetter, Bukima, Olson, and Viet, LLC.
any more for that?
Second.
I'm fine.
Second.
Susan, second.
Yeah.
Questions? Yes.
I would like to make a motion, or amendment, that we eliminate Bueller, Vetter, Bukema, Olson, and Ballot, because I am of the opinion, strong opinion, that we didn't hire them to be a lawyer to begin with, they hired themselves as lawyers, and haven't given us the best advice to begin with. So I would strongly encourage us to drop them from our list.
Just to clarify, Bulow, Vetter, and Bukima, and Olson was the firm that we hired for the investigation
Right,
back in the winter.
Right.
and they hired themselves as lawyers. So,
Is there a second?
So then you have to ask for a second twice.
Well,
Need a second for the amendment?
I'll second that.
Okay, so for the amendment, we have a first and second to remove Bueller, Vetter, Buchner, and Olson.
Olson.
and Ballot,
And
Unbelievable.
you don't want Ballot all there by himself.
Discussion.
Okay, discussion on that?
Jeff, can you tell us a little bit why you...
Because we hired them to investigate, and then they after they investigated, they said they were our lawyers, and we didn't have access to any of the information, which was, I felt, ridiculous. And then they also made it.
There wouldn't be plans to use them for anything else. There are no plans to use them for anything else at this moment, are there?
It depends on whether.
I think
Yeah,
that
I'm
it's
asking
an
Dan.
ongoing
I'm
matter,
sorry,
right?
that's Dan.
Yeah, I don't know that we can,
Yeah. Well, I'm going to oppose that amendment because I think that there's an ongoing matter and we may need to use them again. We probably won't, but we might. So I just think it would be imprudent to take them off. It doesn't mean we have to use them again. It just means they're there and we can use them.
So I have a,
At this point, I mean, we can use them again. I don't think we have to have them as our designated legal counsel, however. That's a different
Yeah,
status.
can't-
This is
can't-
the status. This has nothing to do with
Can't
whether
we
we use
use
them.
them if we choose?
Yeah, absolutely.
But then, just because they're not designated legal counsel doesn't mean we can't use them.
Correct.
Because we used them once, and they weren't designated as.
Do you have to come back?
well,
It will be
not 100% certain, but I'm fairly certain there's actually no requirement that you've approved any law firms at your reorganizational meeting. It's more of a formality, so you're clear. You can approve on a case-by-case basis as needed, or if you have a standing agreement.
These are sentences.
So would that mean you would have to come back to us if we needed to use them for something?
Yes.
Or it would, is that
I
what you're
guess
saying?
it depends on what for, depending
We
on the
might not have
policy,
to,
what
right.
requires board approval versus
Right.
not, so.
Because, yeah, I think, yeah.
Dean,
Okay.
I would interpret this, that firm would not be a standing law firm, but that, as we did in the past, if it's necessary for some reason, we need that, we could act on that occasion and debate the issue at that point.
Susan.
Again, I think it's really difficult when you may not have a totally resolved issue and you've had extensive work done by a particular group, whether it's an accounting group or a law firm or whatever, to switch in the middle. If we feel strongly about that, we can still do that even if we approve them. But this allows Dan, if he needs to connect with them without having to come back to us. We can still come back and say, we don't want to use them anymore. This is just a formality to allow him access.
We agree on that?
I would say that if this issue is ongoing and they need to come back to us, they should come back to us because those are the things we should know what's going on.
Okay.
So,
So then it'd be you're withdrawing your amendment?
no,
No.
no, not at all. I want my amendment to pass.
Okay, so we're at the amendment right now.
Yeah,
We have the motion, which you,
Get the motion in
And a second,
So
yeah.
now we vote, right?
Second vote on the amendment.
all in favor?
Roll call vote.
Roll call, so Dean?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Nay.
Aye.
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 Okay, the amendment passes. So we go back to the original minus
That one.
Bueller, Better,
Right.
Baltimore, Olson, and
Bleak.
Blight LLC, Bleak LLC.
And that's already motioned in second.
Right.
Yes,
Right.
we're on the main motion.
Okay. Okay.
Roll call vote?
No.
We're on the final motion now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Aye.
Aye.
Well, wait,
Oh,
you need to call for the vote.
no, she can
He
go.
did.
Oh, I didn't
Sorry.
call for the vote.
He did.
Roll call
Oh,
vote.
you
Yeah,
called
he
for
did
a
call
roll
for
call.
a roll.
Okay.
Yeah. No, we're voting on the main motion now,
You-
to hire all those
Aye.
firms
Without
them,
That's
correct.
Aye.
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 That's what I thought I
Ayes
heard.
have it.
Yes,
Motion carries. Designation for official.
I move approval of a resolution naming the Herald Independent and McFarland Thistle as the official newspapers of the school. I'm sorry, the Herald Independent and McFarland Thistle as the official newspaper of the school district. That changed, they merged.
Second.
Seconds. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Designation of membership for professional organizations.
I move approval of a resolution naming the following organizations as professional organizations with the Monona School District are members, Wisconsin Association of School Boards, and CISA number 2.
Second.
Eric seconds. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Designation for CISA 2 representative. For that delegate, for me, I like to move for the current person that is on it. If they do not want, we can find someone else.
Who is the current one?
Yeah, I did it last year, and it's really, you just go to this one meeting in Whitewater. If somebody else, I have somebody else, I can change it, then go do it again. But if somebody else wants to do it, I'm fine with that. It's a one-time thing.
One-time thing.
I think it's something that somebody needs to do, but we don't need permanent representatives there.
Exactly, yeah. So if somebody else wants the experience, and it's a different group. It's the CISA board, like ours, but you meet with the representatives from the other school districts as well, send their delegates. So any takers?
I'll go there.
Okay,
You want to go,
I
Dean?
think
Yeah, I was
that's
on
good.
their full board for a while.
right.
I
yeah,
move
yeah,
approval
that
of Dean
works.
Vole serving as the CISA 2 representative for 2019-2020.
I can add that
Wait,
to my
actually-
resume.
Second.
Okay, so we had
Moved and seconded.
moved and second. Any discussion for Dean?
Sounds
All in
good.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No opposes. Motion carries. Designation of Monona Grove Education Foundation representative. Who is the current one serving that one?
Remember this year we split it between, Susan did the first half of the year and then Dean did the second half, but they changed their meeting time is now different, which people should take note of.
What time
It's
is
the
it?
second Tuesday from 4 to 5:30 at the district office. So it's not, it used to be in the morning before work, now it's the afternoon. So
And you really do
you have to be there at 4.
kind of
right?
need to be able to go.
Yeah,
So,
whoever it is should
If you volunteer,
commit to
you
going
gotta
every
go.
time, right?
So anybody would have time to do that? And should we do like?
I'd be willing to do it. I'm sure Susan would too, but you want to do it?
well, if you're going to do it, I want you to go. Because there were 5 meetings after December and you made 1. I just want you to go because it's important that somebody's there.
If you tell me to go, I go.
That'll be the day. No, I think you should do it.
I move
Go
approval
for
of
it.
I move approval of Dean Vole serving as Monona Grove Education Foundation representative for 2019-2020.
Second.
Somebody second that. Unless Dean
I'll
does.
second.
Second it.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those Opposing? Motion carries. All right, designation for the WASB delegate. I was the WASB delegate.
I think you did a fine job.
I think you did a great
And
job.
Yeah.
Mr. President, I would like to do it again.
Sounds good to me.
Great.
I'd like to move approval of Andrew McKinney serving as the Wisconsin Association of School Boards delegate for 2019-2020.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposes? Motion carries. All right. Designation of Monona Grove New Teacher Project Steering Committee Representative.
So now I had a question about this. I thought they weren't meeting anymore as a committee. Do we still need a liaison, or how does that, would it be if they met, or?
Yeah,
'cause they used
they-
to meet regularly, and I thought they.
Yeah, they meet either 3 or 4 times a year.
Oh,
or as
okay,
needed.
so it's just not every month, I see,
Right.
okay. Oh, it said, it used to be quarterly, I see. Or maybe they
It used
changed,
to be.
it used to be every month, and that's what they
Yeah.
changed, that was,
Yeah.
I thought they
Correct. They still-
disbanded altogether, okay, got it, so we still need one, okay. All right,
So who was on it? Actually,
was that Eric? I think Eric was.
For what?
The,
the
He
steering
might not,
committee.
he might have forgotten, but I
the
think,
new teacher project steering committee.
I don't know.
I nominate Eric Hart. as-
Well, wait, they have to be able to get there at 4, again, it's another
is that
4 to
right?
5:30 one, so
No,
it's just quarterly, so it just
I
depends on.
was the board legislator.
Yeah,
so
who
I
else, so it
wasn't
might have been,
serving.
it
The minutes from last year reflect that you were.
reflect that you were
Well, I
right as
don't-
well.
Then I should not be it again.
Yes, you never met.
You know, it's really changed. It's
It
good
has changed,
information, you know, for the board member. Back when it was first created, it truly was a steering committee as the positions were being created in the program. Now the program is well established, and so it's really, the board members there would be a good learning opportunity, but there's really not a lot of decision making going on.
I got no communication then, so,
Right.
about when I was supposed to be, where I was supposed to be.
It's like an umpire. If they don't know you're
But
there,
you
you're doing a good
volunteer
job.
for the job.
Well, in that
so
case,
sometimes
I'll
you
do
have
it.
to connect yourself.
Well, so is there somebody that would like to do it?
I'll be happy to do it.
Okay.
Basically, the
It's a
presence
neat
of the board, I
position.
think,
Yeah.
says that there's
Sure.
some board interest, but your input is
There's no-
minimal. It's mostly asking questions of anything, but I think it's a very worthwhile experience to see what is being done to
I mean, I
to
think
enable
I
their.
Yeah,
remember
mostly-
going to the new teacher orientation, but that's all I remember. That's the
Yeah,
only
and
thing
we
I
all
remember
can do
doing.
that.
If that
No.
entails what it is.
No.
No,
me,
no,
that's not what it
It's
is.
a mentoring program. We
a
passed the
mentoring
policy
program. All right.
because we
I-
truly believe in it.
I'm happy to volunteer for this,
Mostly I think it's-
even if they do meet.
It's actually a good opportunity to see what an awesome job they
Who's
do.
it,
I
who's in
think,
charge
so.
of setting that up?
The
Who makes the
teach-
contact
The
to
two teacher mentors, I think.
make sure the
Trace
board,
says
the
name.
board members are gonna be there?
The one board liaison.
Yeah.
I don't know, I assume it's the two teacher mentors.
So those mentors.
So they
never-
need to be given the name.
Right,
Maybe
because they
that's
never
it.
contacted
Right,
us.
okay.
I move approval of Peter Sobel serving as the Monona Grove New Teacher Project
All right.
Steering Committee Representative for 2019-2020.
I'll second that
All right, move to second.
discussion.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries.
Can I make a quick comment? I apologize, I misread the minutes. Eric, you were not.
See?
You actually made,
Thank you.
seconded the motion, and I apologize. So it was actually Andrew McKinney.
It was Andrew. I thought it was one of you new guys. 'Cause I thought we were trying to get you to do it.
Oh, my goodness.
I
Very good.
apologize.
You didn't get contacted either.
I was like,
Whatever. it's a
Andrew?
Really neat.
Could
thing
you
to do.
reflect on your experiences there?
oh, my goodness.
That's why you never got contacted.
Right.
Man, I didn't get contacted. Okay.
Okay, well, we'll make sure.
We'll make sure we get some
That's
contact this
embarrassing.
time. Okay, designation for board legislative liaison.
I would be interested in doing this again because this is a budget year at the Capitol, so there are going to be a lot of hearings. And I do make the time to go to them. I did go to the joint finance one, and even though I said last year I was kind of ready to give it up, it is something I'm really interested in. I track it, and I do go to all that stuff and sit there for many hours. The opportunity to speak for 2 minutes.
We'd like to move for Susan Fox.
I'd so move.
Second.
All right, move to second. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Designation of membership in Wisconsin Public Education Network.
I would so move that we continue our membership in that organization.
Second.
Okay. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. All right, that's it for the designation. All right, let's get rocking. The business. Everybody's here. Okay, so we go to public appearances. We have Sarah Moran.
Hello.
All right, come on up.
I'm taking my water because I'm at the end of a cold in case I have to take a little sip. I'm Sarah and I live in Monona and I have a...
What's your address?
Oh, right, 6300 Sylvan Lane
Thank you.
in Monona. I have a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old and I'm here to talk about just in support of renewable energy for the district and any other sustainable efforts that can be made. So I'm here to talk about the health benefits of renewable energy in particular. And my background is I'm a journalist. I've worked for Mayo Clinic, the Wall Street Journal, the Star Tribune, and I have a lot of years of interviewing doctors and healthcare providers and reading research and talking with scientists. And based on this, these years of experience, I personally feel that the #1 health issue of our time is the environment. And children are the most vulnerable to the effects of what's happening in our environment. Their bodies are smaller, and so when they are accumulating toxins or exposed to them, it has more of an effect. They have more of a lifespan to accumulate those toxins, and they've already inherited a toxic world more so than generations prior. I think it's important for people to know that burning fossil fuels is contributing to rising rates of disease and illness. They emit harmful, toxic pollutants into the air, water, and food supplies. And as you probably know, most of our local energy comes from burning fossil fuels. The primary fossil fuel that Mckinney uses or burns is coal. Coal is the #1 source of mercury emissions in our country. And most people know mercury is not friendly for our health. Even in tiny amounts, it has toxic effects on the nervous system, digestive system, immune system, lungs, kidney, and more. And the mercury is just one example of a toxin that ends up in our air supply and our water supply because we're burning fossil fuels. I think that there's a pretty good awareness now. People understand that climate change and pollution and the toxins we have in our environment are contributing to the rising rates of allergies, asthma, and COPD, other respiratory illnesses. But pollution and chemical exposure, including from burning fossil fuels, are involved in a number of other diseases and conditions that people don't always connect the dots about. And that includes anxiety, depression, cancer, heart attacks, strokes, high blood pressure, diabetes, weight gain, obesity, and thyroid diseases. Also linked to behavioral problems, ADHD, and shorter attention spans. The World Health Organization says environmental hazards overall have a devastating impact on our global health. And years ago, the organization warned that chronic disease, including neurocognitive problems, autoimmune disease, cardiovascular disease, and metabolic disease, are quickly reaching epidemic levels across the globe. We know that toxins play a role in a lot of these illnesses. In 2010, the President's Cancer Panel stated that the true burden of environmentally induced cancer has been grossly underestimated and that the public remains largely unaware of many environmental carcinogens. And another interesting point, a recent study at Harvard University determined that by switching to clean renewable energy, a region can save between $6 million to $210 million in public health and climate costs per year, depending on the size of the region.
Okay, that's 3 minutes.
What's that?
That's 3 minutes.
Oh, is it?
Keep going.
Oh, okay. Well, that was almost the end. I just want to say, like, it takes a huge toll on our health, and that especially for our children. So I hope that you guys will vote in favor of renewable energy and continue to keep that in mind for the district.
All right, thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.
Well done.
Okay, Aaron Bibb.
My name's Aaron Bibb. I live at 6004 Ridgewood Avenue in Monona. Like a lot of people over the last couple meetings, I'm also here to speak about the renewable energy issue. And I was trying to think, what can I add? Because I'm not a science person, I'm not a health person. My wife's the environmental attorney. But I have read some research, some policy research in this area, and I just wanted to speak to the issue that I think it's easy to dismiss what the contribution that a small district can make in shifting to renewables. A lot of people might object, it's a drop in the bucket, or if you demand renewables, it's just going to shift the dirty energy to some other part of the grid. But there's research that shows that as a lot of municipalities, or things like school districts, municipalities, as they shift to renewables, if they hit a critical mass, that's what can really send the message to the energy providers that there's real demand for this and that they actually can't continue just kind of moving the chess pieces around, or the checkers, or whatever they're moving around, moving the coal over here as they move the solar over here. So I think it would be great if our district could serve as a leader in the state to help kind of build critical mass in school districts and communities to shift in mass and show that there really is a statewide demand for this issue. So I'm well below 3 minutes, and I'll yield the rest of my time to the gentleman from Kentucky.
Thank you, Aaron. Next is Tuyama Kamita.
Yes, he was out in the hall.
Let's go on to the next one.
Okay, I'll go to the next one. Emma DeMonte, is that right?
Yep.
Sweet.
Hello, so my name is Emma, and I'm a senior currently at Monona Grove. And I'm also going to talk about renewable energy. I was asked to speak by my science teacher, Mr. Q. And so I'd like to just convey the sentiment of Monona Grove student body and express our support for renewable energy. And I think one way that we can achieve this is through partnering with Madison Gas.
Here, get them around.
Oh, thank you. I only got 6 copies. So this is a presentation that I made last year when I was in environmental science. And just a moment here. So like I said, it's about partnering with Madison Gas and Electric to reduce the cost of installing solar energy to our school. So currently, Madison Gas and Electric estimated that we have 130,000 square feet of usable roof space on our high school, and that using this space, that solar panels could produce 65% of the school's yearly consumption in kilowatt hours, and that could save us $90,000 to $95,000 a year for our school district. And so there's other information also included in those sheets. Thank you for your time.
I have a question.
Yes.
Have you talked to anybody at East, I'm sorry, not East High School, West High School, where they have been working on renewable energy there, program, actually student-driven programs?
Yeah, I haven't been involved there or like spoken with anyone, but this is like a similar idea, but it's a different.
One of the things that they did was they went around the neighborhood and to parents and so on, and essentially sold solar panels for $500 a piece into the community and raised I think they raised close to $100,000 for installation costs for new panels for the building and installation. But I might suggest you get a hold of those folks and find out what they did. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Tuyama Kamita.
I didn't see him out there, so I don't know if
You might have to leave.
Okay. All right, so that'll be it for our speakers. Thank you, speakers, for coming through. Now we move to the consent agenda.
I move approval of move approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Discussion?
Nope, not on the consent agenda.
Okay. Discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Recognition?
I just realized that my list of recognitions is sitting on my desk right now, and so we will make sure we follow up with those. I'll get them electronically to the board, and then we'll make sure we recognize the next board meeting. So I apologize.
Any, yeah.
Somebody else has one.
No.
Yeah.
Fast can you do that?
Yeah, how fast?
How about if I start my report, then we can come back to the recognitions?
Sure.
Sure.
First, let's see, we have correspondence and announcements. No? Okay, let's go.
So just for recognitions, for anybody that got to the first graders music program at Marco School, it just happened to be today, and it was a beautiful day, and it was absolutely incredibly fun. It's like going out to Taylor Curry. I mean, kids were fun, and the kids were great.
That was fast.
Did she put it up there?
She's got it, all right.
Fresh air.
Oh, yeah, there it is. Way to go, Katie.
Except for Dan, over the Dan's got it.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to go to recognitions.
Okay, thank you. Okay, first recognition, student recognition. Jacob Marks, senior at North Grove High School, was awarded the Herb Cole Educational Foundation Student Initiative Scholarship. This scholarship, given annually to 100 graduating high school students in school throughout Wisconsin, recognizes students who are putting forth extraordinary effort to do their best in the classroom and have overcome significant obstacles or adversity. More information and photos for the board are attached electronically. Congratulations to Jacob.
And didn't Herb Cole actually make the presentation?
Yes, he does over here.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's good.
Maya Rex Dean has received the Madison South Rotary Outstanding Student Award. She is the Vice President of the BSU, which is the Black Student Union, and was a participant in Second Harvest Food Bank and Goodman Center events. She's raised funds for the Badger Honor Flight, assisted with the Middle School Students of Color Union, and much more. Again, there's more information to go or share with the board, and so again, congratulations to Maya. Students in Mr. Henry's science class recently worked on a fun STEAM project, STEAM standing for Science, Technology, Engineering, Art, and Math. And it was a design project. Students had to conceptualize, design, and build individual parts to eventually build a Mars lander prototype from given supplies. Students worked in small groups and were given individual jobs, and they incorporated into real-world work skills. After working through the process of testing, collecting, and recording data, and making several modifications, students did a final drop of their Mars lander models from the top of the staircase to simulate the landing while meeting all the criteria and constraints as set forth at the start. And lastly, our very own Ms. Dilcher ran the Boston Marathon last week.
We did?
Okay. Ms. Dilcher, she is a teacher at Cottage Grove School. Before she left for the race, her students and colleagues decorated her room with some good luck shoes. So she is a 4th grade teacher at Cottage Grove School, as well as a track and cross country coach. She's also certainly a role model to all MG students and staff for the hard work and dedication required to make dreams a reality. Again, a big congratulations to Ms. Dilcher.
All right.
And then,
Yes.
Jan, isn't this usually where we have, correspondence and announcements?
We
Was
had that
before
already.
the end of the reports?
Right.
Okay.
Okay. So we're going to go no correspondence and announcements. We're going to go ahead to the superintendent's report.
Okay. So I wasn't planning on reporting, but since we have some guests with us tonight, just a brief update with regard to where we're at in the status of exploring sustainable energy solutions with our new school as well as remodeling. We do have an agenda item. At the end of the agenda will be a little bit of an update on the facilities. So at this point, we're still in that exploration stage of examining, and the priority right now is with the new school, and then the renovations will come. We're doing some work with that, but that decision making will be a little bit later. So right now, everything is on the table for sustainable solutions, looking at the primary source of power, geothermal, and possibly solar use as well. So And like I said, it's a work in progress, and we'll certainly keep the board updated on that, and along with the cost and potential savings with that in the long run as well. So that's something that we'll certainly make sure we want to communicate out, as that decision making moves forward, and that will really be in the next few months with regard to the new school. And then the exploration about either short-term with renovations or long-term goals as well will be part of this process over this next year. But again, I guess I'll also say, certainly there's been a number of community members that we've had, conversations with, and certainly always welcome those. And so if you don't feel that you're getting communication or have questions, please contact myself personally or anyone in our office. We're glad to have these conversations with you.
And will always be posted on the website as well. So okay.
Absolutely. So. Okay, and then just a second item, just to share with the board. As you know, we recently had our annual education conference. It was held here in Madison, and so I just shared the agenda with you. And the only thing I would say is, just like our national conference, really the theme of the conference is equity. And one of the big takeaways, really, some of the discussion that is kind of exciting, is that we use the word equity a lot. And certainly this board and our administrators and teachers have talked about what that means in our school district. But what's exciting is that we, and I don't think this is a political statement by any means, but we clearly have a governor who is very much in, support of our educational efforts. And so for the first time in a long time, we have alignment between the governor's office, Department of Public Instruction, as well as our organizations, our administrative organizations like WASDA, WASB, and a number of teacher organizations. And so it's an exciting time that this work is so important, and that we seem to, an opportunity for us to work together and not be in isolation in individual school districts. And that's one of the challenges. This work is so, we've talked about our, our Dane County schools have created a consortium, but it's really, statewide, kind of having the same work. And so I had shared that I had the opportunity to be part of a panel to talk about the work here at Monona Grove. And what was interesting is it was really a cross-section. A couple of the other superintendents were part of that, were from smaller rural districts and what equity means in those districts. And so it's really great to have that conversation with colleagues across the state, and that we can learn from. So.
All right. Thank you, Dan. Board reports. We'll start with Susan Fox for the Policy Committee.
All right, so the Policy Committee met Monday, and I don't really have much of a report. We went through part of, we have about I read about 10 or 12 additional policy updates. We worked on a few of them and then decided we really needed more time on some, so we're meeting again next Monday, the 29th at noon, and we'll be bringing that whole grouping of policies forward at the meeting after that. We do have some policies for second reading possible action on the agenda tonight, so I'll just wait till we get to those to talk about those. That's it.
Any questions? Okay. Personnel Committee, Dean.
Yes, we've met 2 or 3 times on issues with MGEA, and we're not finished. We probably have one more meeting on the handbook, and then we have to deal with the bargaining issues. For interest of the board, the teachers have, we've had a lot of discussion on it, but no final votes by the committee on reimbursements for a number of teacher activities like IEP meetings and curriculum program meetings, team teaching sub-reimbursements and other reimbursements for like sick days, unused sick days, and that sort of thing. We've not made any decisions on that or discussed those to a great extent. But most of our time was spent on, we had two meetings with the number of teachers at both meetings talking about impact on preparation time. Teachers indicating that their preparation time has been taken or is inadequate for, and it's, and I think the committee has been, just for all of your information, the school policy is that there's 250 minutes of preparation time allowed each week. It's 5 50-minute blocks. Plus there are other times in the day that add more time to that are above that. For example, when art or music is offered, that adds some other time in most of the schools, or more or less. And the question is that when do individual teachers, do they have this time taken up with additional meetings and so forth? We haven't resolved anything, but we certainly, I think, have been a good listening and sounding board. And I think that when this issue comes if it does come to the board for board approval, that I think the committee and those who have been involved have been, I think we've been informed, and I think we've learned a lot from the teachers too. So, any questions? Okay.
I would just add, I think we had a great discussion on the calendar, and I think it helped identify, I know it's been a struggle, particularly for the administration, to figure out, trying to make it a collaborative process, and Dan, went through that again in terms of what they do, and it really helped identify that there were issues other than straight put the days on the calendar issues. Did you think? Issues of involvement and ownership in the process and that sort of thing. Well, in issues that were bigger than just a calendar issue. Talking about, for instance, one of them was termed format of a particular, of parent-teacher conferences. So that wouldn't be a real straight calendar issue. That was more of a process issue. Well,
I don't think that was our issue to deal with that, but it was brought up as. It was on the list. Yeah, but it was brought up as how is that sequenced in the days of the year and so forth, and which makes the calendar process, which seems on the surface very simple in general, but it is in some parts complex.
I have a question that actually goes back to the previous topic, which was the prep time, and it sounded like it was mostly elementary prep time, might be more. I'm just wondering, because I know you've been talking about this.
I should have. It's elementary.
Right. You've been talking about this for a while. I'm just wondering what kinds of options you're thinking of offering, because the only way to get prep time is to have, as you just said, the students have to be somewhere else. So are you thinking of extra related arts? Are you looking at early release times, or what? Have you thought of? Are there options like that you're looking at, or?
I think basically no. I don't think we're looking at those kind of options at this point. That's not come up.
But I mean, I don't know how else you get more time. That's what I'm.
It did come up to. It did come up though for one of the things, if it was possible to find the time to add a day that there wasn't students for that prep time, but the time's not there. So. I mean, so the discussions were there, but then there's the time doesn't exist. So
right, that's what I'm wondering. Yeah. Anyway, okay. Well, we'll just wait for your final.
I think the issue is to some extent. I guess I presented the dilemma to the group last week of if you look at the sample teacher times that we were shown, is that there's not only 250 minutes, but there is also additional time that's dealing with, there's library or things like that. So it comes up to roughly over 400 minutes, something like that at least. But it's not as, from the teacher's perspective, it's not as easily looked at it that way. But it's so my question to the teachers is that we have this, now what's happening to that time? And I think that I guess I don't have all the answers in my mind, and I think that we need to have a little more discussion on that ourselves and everything. I'm just telling you the kind of work we're doing and the dilemmas that we face, and I think that I think it's been good for the board members who participated to give a good solid hearing to teacher concerns, and they to my judgment, they appear to be real impacts on their time, whatever it might be. But my concern is I see a lot of minutes and what's happening and that sort of thing.
The other thing they did is they kind of, in addition to having the schedules, they walked us through the day. And one of the major differences, and the other thing is they did start to offer solutions. I think Eric spoke to that. But one of the major differences at the elementary level is they have to escort the students to their next class. So it may look like they have 30 minutes of prep time, but if they just spent 5 minutes taking them to the IMC and 5 minutes walking back, then that during the day dramatically affects the total minutes. So it was a really, really good
There are factors of elementary teaching that are different than the high school so-called free period that type of thing when you have that sort of thing. I think to me it was been very informative sessions, and I don't know the entire dimensions of any solution at this point except to see if some of that time can be preserved in some way or fashion.
Sure.
Eric, you were there too. Is that a fair?
I think you guys covered everything.
I thought it did. Okay.
You did, thank you.
All right.
When,
Okay.
so, Dean, on the things that we reach consensus on, when, do you have a plan when to bring that to the board for discussion?
Oh yeah. We'll anything that we decide upon that would be added to a handbook, for example, would be brought to the board for adding to the handbook. For sure.
So,
I think you're asking when?
yes. On the money. Thank you.
Like next month or the month after?
We came to consensus on at least one issue.
Yeah, we have 2 or 3 issues that we've had some kind of consensus on, but we've really not voted on all the things there yet.
So you're going to wait until all the issues are?
I think so, just as a final report. Unless you want to bring up one tonight that I don't really want to bring up.
No, I think you bring them all.
I'm not the chair.
I want to bring all 3 of them, make sure everybody get it all together. Bring all 3 to
We're
the
just
table.
trying to get a time frame because the teachers are going to ask. So.
Yeah, I'm in touch with them.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right, moving on to Teaching, Learning, and Equity Committee. Eric?
Teaching, Learning, Equity Committee met yesterday, Tuesday, April 23rd. We had Dr. Peter Guff from the UW Educational Leadership and Policy come and speak regarding teacher hiring and shortages in the state of Wisconsin, specifically related to minority recruiting and hiring. I thought it was a really good discussion. There's a lot of information. I think it was very valuable to hear. We also have 2 working drafts, which we hopefully will coordinate with the committee to come up with 1 committee draft to present to the board. That is one of our action items for the next meeting, which is on May 7th at 6:30 p.m.
Any questions? All right, moving on to possible action items. First is the charter school contract between the Monona Grove School District and Monona Grove Liberal Arts Charter School for the 21st century.
Okay, so if you don't mind, I'll give a little introduction, then I'll turn it over. Okay, so we have with us tonight our Governance Board President Denise Peterson and Executive Director Rebecca Fox-Belair. And before you, we're asking for approval of the MG21 charter, and so this would be a revision. The main purpose for the revision, of course, is to incorporate the expansion for grades 6 through 8. But while we were making the revision to include those grades, since the last charter approval, there's been some statutory changes that we need to incorporate into this charter as well. So it's been quite a process. Unbelievable amount of work by these two individuals as well as the entire governance board. We also have with us Phil McDade and Sue Carr, who are part of the MD21 governance board. And so a lot of time was put in. We spent a lot of time with legal counsel as well to make sure that we had everything accurate. As it turns out, one of Boardman and Clark's attorney, our general counsel, is kind of what the resident expert on charter school law in Wisconsin, Tessa Bryan, and so she has actually kind of created the template. And so so we had a little bit of things to clean up back and forth, but ultimately it's a really strong charter and well done that will really meet the needs of both the school as well as the district. So if there are any questions at all specifically about the charter, again, Denise and Rebecca can answer it myself. So.
Any substantive changes other than what you just have to do to meet the statutory?
I was going to say that.
And add 5 to 7.
I was going to say the significant thing was that there have been changes in state and federal law, and the National Association of Charter School Authorizers has a bunch of recommendations, and so.
Can you explain the differences in how you either operate or educate?
There weren't any like huge
I didn't think
differences
so.
as far as how we operate or educate. There's nothing like that. It was just more like clarification of things that in the past were kind of implied in the old charter, now are specifically laid out as to kind of the processes and how things have to look and who's accountable for what. But everything pretty much runs the same and looks the same. It's just a matter of kind of really putting it clearly in black and white.
Was 3.6C, the assessment of school success, was that in the prior charters?
I think this is the language that we had.
3.5C, 3.5C.
3.5? C.
Okay.
Yes.
Assessment.
Yeah, that was always, that's basically
always
what
there.
we've always had for our accountability report that we bring to you every year. That's the same need of that report.
I would say one of the more significant things was just some language around the governance board and its responsibilities. That was something that the Fed wanted clarified. So that's probably the biggest changes, really.
You want a closer oversight by us?
Less by us, more by them.
Yeah.
They wanted some clarification about the admissions, like the lottery and how that works. There's just like little things like that that just had spelled out specifically that they wanted us to spell out. That kind of came under that Act 55.
I think the result was excellent. It's really clear. It's really well done. And I'm really happy to hear you have so many middle schoolers. Sounds great.
I would just add that Dan has been very helpful and supportive in this whole process, and it's made it much easier to get everything done. That close collaboration has been wonderful.
I move approval of the MG21 charter as presented.
Second?
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
If I could real quickly before we get to the next item, I failed to recognize as well with us this evening Melissa Hahn, who's the high school associate principal. She also serves as the administrator for MG21.
Oh,
And
okay.
so she's with us as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Next, agreement with ALMA Advisory Group to provide support for recruitment and hiring review.
Andrew, I'd like to make an amendment to the service agreement as it's written. And I can read the amendment for everybody. And I want to assure everybody that I spoke with Monica today, and she told me that she could meet the changes to this amendment as I'm going to read it. So I'd like to change on page 4. It says activities include the following.
Wait, let me find that part. Okay. You're looking at the service agreement. So
Yeah, the district service agreement, which is the same as the ALMA contract.
Okay, well,
So that'd be
the
the
Monona Grove
timeline of the
proposal.
services.
Yeah, it's the service agreement.
So the service agreement only has 2 pages, and then there's an Exhibit A.
I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages.
Oh, wait, 6, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so say again what you're looking at. Page.
I'm looking at page 4, the page after Exhibit A.
Okay.
Page starts
with activities include the following.
Correct.
Right, got it, okay.
And activities include the following. I would keep that. Interview approximately 3 senior leaders. And I would like to, I'm going to read it as it's written. I would like to amend it to say these should be individuals who serve on the superintendent's cabinet. I would like to strike board members and or key internal stakeholders who are engaged in the district's recruitment and hiring activities, and key external stakeholders who interact regularly with recruiting and hiring functions. I would like to add including union leadership, period, and then add, in addition, we'll meet with each board member.
So do you have that in writing? Someone we could send it.
That right there.
Oh, yeah. Well, sorry. Can you send it
I can.
to us? So, okay.
Yeah. And then I would like to...
Eric, before you go, could you explain the
reason.
purpose and the impact of what you're doing?
Well, I think as it was written, it didn't clarify that they would meet with board members, and I thought if we're going to invest money, it's important that they meet with each board member, or at least each board member has the opportunity to meet with them. And Monica told me that she would most likely be reserving a day, and we would be able to meet with them during that day, or day and a half that they have to meet with everybody else.
Right. So when you said strike, were you only striking board members from that first paragraph?
Right, because I'm
adding a separate sentence.
Adding a separate sentence to include all board members.
That's what I thought. And then instead of may include union leadership, you're saying will include union. So that's really the only 2 substantive changes you're making?
Correct. Oh, and there's one more, where it says facilitate 1 meeting with clients, principals, ideally all, but if not, then a well-represented group. I'd like to add and HR director to that.
Okay, now wait, where's that one?
That's right under
That's
the,
the next bullet
the
down.
second bullet.
Procedurally, we haven't moved the original, made a motion to move the language of the service agreement.
Do we have to make that motion?
As presented, well, either that or you need to clarify that you're making a motion to move the presentation of the service agreement.
Actually, I'll move.
Because otherwise your amendment's out of order.
Yeah, and then you can, and then that would
Then
give
we
us
can
time,
do that.
maybe also to send that amendment to the printer so everybody's clear on it. That might be a good idea too.
I'll
I think
email it to
that's possible.
everybody
Is that
right now.
possible? Anyway, I will move, just so we can do that amendment, I move approval of the agreement with the Alma Advisory Group to provide support for recruitment and hiring review as presented. To start it off.
And do I have a
Then I
second?
need a second.
As presented how I wrote it?
No.
No, as presented, because then you're
We
gonna.
gotta do the original, then we can do the amendment.
Oh, okay.
That's just a cleaner way to do it.
I got you. Okay.
Procedure-wise.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
But
So do
now
I
I need a
have
second.
a second on the, for the first motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay.
Now you can make.
Now
the
we can make.
Now you can move
make the
your amendment.
So now I'd like to make the previous amendment that I read, which I will read again.
Okay.
And I'm going to email this to everybody in 2 seconds. Under activities include the following. There should be individuals who serve on the superintendent's cabinet, comma, and or key internal stakeholders who are engaged in the district's recruitment and hiring activities, comma, and key external stakeholders who interact regularly with recruiting and hiring functions, comma, adding, including union leadership, period, adding, in addition, we'll meet with each board member, period, and then adding to the next bullet down, facilitate 1 meeting with clients, principals, ideally all, but if not, then well-represented group, adding and HR director.
I need a second.
I'll second.
Okay. So it's moved by Eric, second by Susan. Question?
Does this change the
Email-
cost?
I can email it to you.
No. It's adding more people.
No, yeah, because it's going to be up to adding the people. The union was already kind of in there. It's
Right.
just making sure that they meet with them. all the board members and the HR, it's going to be up to us to coordinate with their schedule when they're here.
And make sure we get
Yeah,
that.
and so they'll let us know when the schedule is. If we can't meet with them that day, they said we could call them on the phone and talk to them.
And that would apply to, Eric?
Yeah.
That would apply to a meeting of the Personnel Committee as well.
Well, all board members.
All board members,
Yeah.
so it would be, yeah. Right.
And teachers are in.
Their teachers were already in.
Well, yeah, that'll be accounted for in the rest of this process, and union leadership is in there. They're not meeting with committees, they're meeting with board members as far as that goes, and then union leadership, so that, yeah.
Okay, I'll pretend.
Yeah, that works.
I'll pretend the word personnel is not there when we meet.
Well, I'm kind of speaking in favor of the whole motion, and I think these are fine, because I think I would like to see him meet with each board member, so I like that addition, and I think those are decent additions. One thing last night, and I didn't bring this up when you were giving your committee report, because I figured it would be more appropriate to bring it up now. We did talk about this a little bit in the Teaching, Learning, and Equity Committee last night, and there was clear support from committee members for this, because we feel like we've been talking about increasing minority hiring for a really long time. We've done a lot of things to try to help that situation, but we haven't made inroads really, and there was a lot of thought, and I guess I personally agree with this, that I think sometimes it's helpful to have a third party come in and do these kinds of interviews, look at what we're actually doing now, and then review our whole process, even though we have revamped it, and just see if there's something else we can do, to find candidates. Some other ideas came up last night that they also might be helpful on, because these aren't easy things, but interns, for example, or ways to get student teachers. So there were a lot of different things, and I think it would be helpful. I also called a couple of Madison school board members, because they did really extensive work with the Madison district, much more so than they would do for us. It included for them a teacher compensation plan, for example. And from one board member, I had many more reservations. He didn't necessarily he thought some of the hires weren't the best. Some of the things would have happened anyway, is not generally in favor of consultants. The other person I talked to was very much in favor of it, and felt that even though they have a long way to go in the 5 years, their report and I read a copy of their report too, which Eric got from Madison, and I thought I was impressed with it, and I think his feeling was, James Howard, who I talked to, and his feeling was that even though they have a long way to go, that within the 5 years since they did this, they have made great strides. And he said, yes, we did make some hiring mistakes, but they hire so many more people every year than we do. I mean, they hire hundreds of people, whereas we hire between 30 and up to 50 is max. I mean, we've had in the 40s, I think, below 40s the last couple of years. But, not all hiring situations, and they hire at least that many principals, as we hire teachers. So it's a whole different picture as far as that goes. And he felt like just focusing on that wasn't particularly helpful, that Monica, who heads this, that their team was very good to work with and very knowledgeable in this area, and absolutely recommended it. And I know their superintendent does as well. I don't know if you want to say anything about that.
I'd ask that we discuss and dispose of Eric's amendment before we proceed to the general discussion, just to keep things neat and orderly.
Do we have anything else?
I guess, well, I don't have anything to add to what I already said. I think the amendment's fine.
So I don't feel good about this company, but I do feel a little better about Eric's amendment, because before the amendment, they were going to talk to 18 people and tell us how we're doing in our district. And then when asked me about our district, and 18 people out of 250, 300 people is not a representative sample of our district. So, which counted to my math about $1,700 a person they were going to do. So now, according to my new math, they got 28 people, so it's a little bit better of the representation. So I do feel better about Eric's amendment than the original, but I think maybe we'll get to all the principals, maybe we'll talk to 10 teachers. is not professional or a very good way to do it, personally. So I do like Eric's amendment if we do end up hiring these guys, but.
I felt the same way, and actually, I called Monica today because I wanted to see if adding that was possible, and she said it most definitely is. And if it's a time thing where we want to meet with her and we can't, they will consult with us individually by phone, so that they will make the time to do that. And she agreed that that was important as well. Because when I first heard about the amendment, I was under the impression they were going to meet with all the board members. And then when I read it, it didn't necessarily clarify that. So I wanted to make sure that that was in there.
Dan, how do you foresee our personnel director relating to this and being involved with it?
Well, I mean,
is this going to be a separate parallel operation, or to what extent is this going to be integrating district resources that are already there too?
sure. I mean, the recommendations are for the district, not for individuals. And so within those recommendations, as we look at which ones we're able to implement, some or if not all, then it'll be up to me to determine, working with staff, who is responsible for what. So of course the HR director will have an integral role in that.
Okay, so your conception of this is that it will be a broader school-wide, district-wide effort.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the principals do the hiring.
And not shoring up the resources in personnel per se.
No, I mean, it'll be the district-wide approach. I mean, right now it's important, that position is very much in a coordination role, but the principals are the ones that do really the hiring, process. So it's that everyone is involved.
Okay.
All right, I'd like to ask for a vote on the amendment.
I would like to add a couple of things. On the amendment? Just
Yes,
on the
the
amendment?
amendment. Yes, the
Yeah,
amendment.
okay, let's vote on
Yeah,
it.
we're voting on the amendment now. So I'd like to ask for a vote on the amendment.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I think we've done enough discussion.
Well, now we can discuss the main motion.
Discuss more?
Yes.
Yeah, 'cause now we have to discuss what the amendment with the motion.
Okay, go for it.
Susan discussed a little bit before kind of the feeling of the Teaching and Equity Committee, and I would echo that. That's the general feedback I got, that it would be something that the committee would support. I am very hesitant on the consulting, but I do think sometimes we need to, as a district, take a risk like this if we really want to accomplish tackling this issue, this very difficult, challenging issue of hiring a more diverse staff. And I think it goes beyond that. And after talking with Monica today, she brought up a district called River Forest because my concern was that the districts that they worked with were much larger. But there's a district called River Forest in Illinois that is pretty similar to our district. The town has 11,172 people. It's a little bit outside of Chicago. Their enrollment's lower, but it's 1,432. But what is very similar is their relation to their student enrollment compared to white, black, Hispanic, and Asian students. It's pretty close to Monona Grove. So she seemed like she understood the differences between a smaller school district and a larger school district. And that was important to me. And as hesitant as I am on approving something like this, one side of me thinks we could really benefit from this. And I realize that there may not be a benefit from it, but we'll never know that unless we take the opportunity to explore this option. I honestly would really, I know everybody has different opinions. I think it would be really powerful and a great statement as a school district if we had a unanimous vote on this. I know that's probably not going to happen, but I think it would really show that we're taking this issue seriously. And again, this is not a for sure thing. There's no guarantee with these. But I'm really pleased with the Teaching, Learning, and Equity Committee, where we're headed with that. I'm really happy to see on our district website that we have an equity in Monona Grove District now and some information about that. I think that we are not only having the discussion, but starting to look at solutions. I know that everybody on this board and everybody sitting at this table is invested in education for the students in this community. And I know that we all, you know, disagree on things, but it would be great if we could try to find a way to come to a unanimous decision. So that's what I have to say about it.
Anybody else?
No.
Maybe.
I want to point out that the cost of this is $27,600 plus $1,900 in expenses. It's almost $30,000. And the scope of this agreement is our work will seek to answer the following questions. And there are 5 questions, some of which I can answer, some of which I think we should be able to answer ourselves. But there's certainly it's certainly not worth spending $6,000 to answer the question, is the district tapping into strong local national sources and employment strategies proven to successfully attract a diverse quality candidate pool? Because I know the answer is no. Okay? There. I've just saved us $6,000. All right? I don't think that we have done our groundwork here. And I also don't think we know quite well enough where we are going yet in order to spend $30,000 doing a retrospective study over, is the district strategically recruiting and selecting high potential candidates who demonstrate the capacity to successfully meet the district needs? Let's answer, that's one of the questions. Let's answer some of these questions. Let's look at what we're doing as a district first. Let's set some goals for what we want to accomplish and then decide whether or not we need a consultant to accomplish those goals before we spend the $30,000. Or, so I'm not ready to support this, and I don't think we as a board or we as a district are ready to move at this point. I strongly support, in fact, I've suggested repeatedly a stronger standard, a stronger metric for the number of the diversity of the staff that we recruit. But the question is not doing that or doing nothing. The question is, what's the best way to do this? And I want to see the most successful way to get this done. One of my concerns is, this is a question, this is going to be give advice to the district. Well, we don't have a district-wide employment process. It is handled at the buildings, as far as I can tell. It's handled in each individual building. Well, why are we seeking district-wide advice when what's going on, when we don't have a district-wide system of hiring, of recruiting and hiring? Let's establish that first. Let's figure out what it is we're doing, and then we can go ahead with district-wide consulting and answering some of these questions.
That's one of the reasons I want to include that they meet with HR.
To answer these questions, but they're not the questions that I want to see answered.
Okay, let me go ahead to Susan, ma'am.
I think the idea, again, I have similar feelings about consultants. $30,000 is an incredibly reasonable amount for the people, if you research this, who have this expertise. They have already done this work, and I think the language I would like to read to the group that's here tonight, and that is, to reach these goals, they will accomplish the following key activities: discussion in our interviews with district staff and potentially other stakeholders to identify gaps and areas of opportunity. How long have we been trying to do that? Eric's been working on it all year long and is having great discussions, but we need somebody to put this data, just exactly like Peter, who came from the university and spoke last night, said, you need the data. You need to find out where you are. We need somebody who can do this. And because as 7 here, we have a tough time agreeing and moving forward, then let's facilitate this. The other thing that was said at Eric's committee meeting last night was, when there was 2 statements of clear agreement with using a consulting service to do this, is, hello you guys, you really need a facilitator to help you move through this information and assimilate it so there are no biases. If I tell my HR person they have to go out and do this, the answers and the results and the interaction is going to be different than it would be with a neutral facilitator. And that's the statement that was made in Eric's committee last night. That was one of several that were absolutely excellent. B, review of available talent-related data to identify gaps and areas of opportunity in teacher recruitment and hiring. Do we have the time or the expertise to put that information together and be able to see it? Again, Peter, who was there last night, would say, you haven't done it, and it's really difficult to do, so let somebody help you move forward. Benchmark research of district activities to relevant research and best practices, benchmarking what we're doing, moving that next step to comparing that to research and best practices. And we don't have a good feel for that right now. We keep talking about looking at other districts. Indeed, review of findings with district leaders and discussion of priority strategies, prioritizing. They're going to talk about, after they've had these discussions, they're going to facilitate a discussion on strategies to moving forward in a very, very difficult, challenging area with tons of barriers. And those are the things we talked about last night. And the general feel, when you were talking to your committee, it was very interesting to listen to that. And actually, there were discussions on the door going out saying, and we received an email saying, you know, this will help you move forward. And I really believe this is the time we need to move forward. When you look at the committee that's been working all year, I mean, it's tough for people to come to that meeting. It's tough for them to have interaction. You set up the teachers to have that discussion that night. You brought in Iris. We need somebody to come in and get a hold of where we are and move us forward. And that's why I'm supporting this. And I seriously researched this work and the people that are doing it. And on the scale, it looked pretty good.
Susan Fox.
I don't know what to add. I also feel that the time has come to quit kind of dancing around the edges, and I just think this is a good opportunity to see what it brings. And as Eric said, there is no magic bullet. This is a very tough issue. A lot of us are facing it, and I just think this would give us a chance to have a really thorough review of where we are and what might be possible, and you know, hopefully something will actually come of it. I mean, I'm hoping that they will point us in that direction. So I just think it's worth trying this and to see where it gets us, because we have not been able to solve this by ourselves. And it's everybody you talk to in this field, and from the conference I went to in Washington to the people I talked to anecdotally here to the recent conversations I had with Madison board members, they're all, and Peter last night, it's a very tough thing. And I just think it's worth giving this a shot. So I'm supporting it for that reason.
Yeah, I'd like to make just one clarifying comment, and you know, response to what you mentioned, Peter, maybe I wasn't clear before in my answer to Dean about the process. The principals are responsible for reviewing candidates or applications, putting together interview teams, conducting the interviews, and then making a recommendation to me for hire, which then eventually comes to the board. The process is uniform. We do have a district-wide process, okay, that Nicole has worked very hard with the principals to develop collaboratively, that we have consistency in all the buildings. So the process is in place. Would I like an opportunity to have that process critiqued, you know, from an expert firm? Absolutely, okay. But I want to be clear that internally, I feel very strongly that we have spent a lot of time on working and to do the best we can, and we really are looking for that critical review of our work.
Peter, do you have something?
You know, I believe until this information from our own internal information, I do believe we have the expertise to do a lot of this. I do believe we have a lot of great, hardworking people, and we have a lot of talent. And I think that people can do this, and until we bring that forward and hear what we can do internally, I don't think we should support spending $30,000 until we have done, we owe it to the taxpayers before we spend $30,000 to do the legwork ourselves, to do the internal, to the work internally that we can do before spending that kind of money.
I think that's a good point. My question would be then, why hasn't it been done up to this point? And I think there's a lot of reasons why. And one of the ways to get it done is we have an opportunity now to have an outside, independent. I would not be advocating for them if I didn't think they could do the job. And I did a lot of research on them. I did a lot of follow-up on them. I checked the references. I would not feel comfortable if I didn't think they could come in and do a thorough, well-done, independent job. And I think the independence thing is very important because we've never had anything we would do would be an internal district thing. There would be somebody from the Monona Grove School District attached to that. Having an independent person from outside the district really can open up a lot of other data and information that we may not have gotten if we did it internally. So that's what I would say to that, Peter.
And my response is we should just ask for it internally, and we should look at what we get internally first, rather than making guesses that we won't get what we need or that the independent research. I don't have any trouble with this company either, but the assumption that we will get answers from $30,000 versus that we're different or better than what we can do internally when we haven't asked for those questions internally is, I don't think the evidence is there, and I don't think it's worth spending the money until we've done our due diligence with the internal work.
Good job.
So I agree with Peter. I think we got to build a base before we bring in a contractor to help us finish the house. I think you do this when you're at the end of your rope, and I don't know that we're at the end of the rope because I don't know that we've done anything. Like, what have we done? Have we sent all our hiring managers to do some equity training on hiring? Have we done that? I mean, what have we done internally to improve our equity hiring? I mean, have we done anything, or is it just, well, maybe we should look into that? I mean, I don't know. Like, it seems to me throwing $30,000 if there's people from Chicago and New York isn't going to help us. So if we haven't done anything, I think a lot of these things, we can talk to 18 teachers. We should be able to talk to our staff. I mean, they only want to talk to 5 principals, 3 other people, and 10 teachers. I mean, we have 5 buildings. That's 2 a building. Like, we should be able to sit down and have those discussions and figure out where we're. Like Peter said, let's get all this information first. A lot of that is like, what brought you to the district? Well, that's easy enough to ask. People can tell us that. What have you heard about a district? If you Google us, what are you going to get, right? You're not going to get a good vibe. I mean, what if they find a great candidate? They come here, where are they going to go? They're going to go to Madison. Madison's paying almost twice as much as us, at least, and Madison pays them twice, the candidate twice as much as us. So, I just think I think it's a nice thing to do to say, hey, look, we're doing something, but I don't think it's doing the actual hard work that needs to be done to actually do it. I think let's do some hard work. Let's build the base, and then look back at these guys and say, okay, we've done what we can. Now, tell us where to make the next step. Because there's no guarantee, and I hate throwing $30,000 at somebody who there's no guarantee. Like everyone said, well, it might work and it might not. It's probably not going to work. I mean,
we don't know that though.
No, we don't. But for $30,000, I'm not willing to bet gamble $30,000.
Okay. I got one. Dan, can you answer the question for him about have we tried sending managers to diversity?
Well, we don't have managers. We have an HR department of 1.
Right.
Yes, we have. The district has. That's a really long answer. Okay. The short answer is yes. We have had training upon training upon training that's equity related well before I've been in the district. Okay, our principals have been trained, our teachers have been trained. So we have done a tremendous amount of work internally.
I would like to make a motion that we postpone the consideration of this until we have received, we as a board has received an opportunity of discussion of from our internal from our administration on the current status of our district activities relative to hiring, current status of our district hiring processes, and our activities relative to recruiting and retaining minority staff.
Don't we have to vote on the current motion on the table though
No,
first?
no, I'm making a motion to postpone.
He's made a motion to postpone.
It's a subsidiary, it's a superior motion.
I'll second.
So
Roll call.
I'd actually
You don't-
just like to speak to that. The reason I'm not in favor of doing that is because it just postpones the whole thing again. I think if to do this now enables them to come in and work between now and the end of the year, and we can get rolling for next year. I mean, we're in the hiring process for this, for the next year. We could get rolling sooner, so I would just as soon not put this off and just get moving, because I'm convinced that it's something we should do, so that's a different view.
Well, we just had a motion and a second. We can do a
So
roll call.
speaking
vote.
against
We have to have a discussion first.
So I had,
There
I
can
was-
be discussion on the amendment, yeah. Eric had his hand up first.
Dan, can you speak to the benefits to the district of getting this done now rather than waiting?
So if the board were to approve, okay, this proposal or service agreement, this work would be done between now and the end of the school year while we have staff present. Report generated over the summer and presented to the board this summer prior to the next school year. So it would allow us to incorporate recommendations next year, prior to next year's hiring season. If it is postponed, now we get into the situation that we'd be getting into summer, so that would put us back a whole year.
My comment would be that if we do this in the fall, we do our hiring process starts in the spring, and I think that there's plenty of time in the fall. They only take 6 weeks to do this. Their timeline's only 6 weeks, and I just think there's plenty of time to do it in the fall.
Pete, Eric.
I would like to ask a question to Jared. If we do this now, is there money in our budget that we could, for this, for $27,000, and where would that come from?
So it would come out of the superintendent's budget.
Okay.
So.
If we waited, would we be on our different budget?
Yep, and then so with zero-based budgeting, he would put it
So
in as
it's possible if we wait that we might not have the money that we do right now.
Possibly,
It's
yes.
our choice.
I'm just,
What I'm hearing so far is that we all got mixed reviews on this right now, and it sounds to me that we may need to table this for further discussion.
We have to vote on his amendment.
That's right.
Well, this is what I'm hearing. Well, this is what I'm hearing from everyone, because we're hearing the cat fight here, and we're talking a lot, and everyone has a voice. However, what I'm hearing is that it seems like we need to table this in a closed session or something else, and go over everything, the amendments, this other we're talking about, because I don't want to be here all night. We don't want to be here all night talking about this. We got other things to talk about. So I want to go with the motion and second that we just did, and we need to postpone it, and we can discuss it at another meeting.
Well, we have to
We've
vote on
discussed
that.
it now.
Yeah, we have to discuss it. We've discussed the amendment, so I was getting ready to call the question and just vote on the amendment.
Yeah, but I would like to see,
But I
before
didn't do
we
that yet.
call the question and vote on it, we can still vote on the postponement,
Right,
and then move back to the original amendment and vote on that tonight.
right, the original
So,
motion, right,
yes.
right.
No, if we postpone,
If we postpone it, we wouldn't.
Right,
But
if
if
the
we don't
postponement
postpone
vote
it-
is a no, we
That's
would
right.
move back to the regular
Right,
amendment
that's
and
right.
vote on that tonight.
correct.
Correct,
Gotcha.
that's how it works.
All right.
So we're ready for a vote?
Ready for the vote? Roll call.
Is there if there's any more discussion on the motion to postpone, you need to make sure that people are done discussing it.
I think we all done. I'm done.
I think Andrew's running that meeting.
I'm done. I'm done. We're done talking. Roll call vote. Start with Dean.
I have a quick question.
I'm sorry.
No,
Before we
Just
vote
started.
before we vote, each member has a right to discuss as much as they want until we're done.
When will the climate survey come out?
So you're talking about staff engagement survey? Okay, this summer.
That seems like an important piece to where we're at too. So,
Related to this?
yeah, absolutely. Don't you think? If there's a poor climate, you're going to have a harder time hiring teachers of anything, if there isn't.
Any teachers.
Yeah. So it seems like it's an important piece of this.
Okay, so back to the question to postpone.
I don't know.
And you wanted a roll call vote? or-
Yeah, I still have a comment. I'm sorry. I just feel like we're just on the verge of actually making some progress, and we're trying to find excuses to not take a chance and maybe get some very new information that we don't have and be an innovative district and try to really take this incredibly difficult issue and problem that no district has solved by themselves and postpone it when we have the opportunity right in front of us to address it right now. And I would just say that, I just hope that everybody can consider that and when they vote, to not postpone this so that we can vote on it tonight.
I would encourage the board as well to make a decision tonight. We've already postponed it once. There's not any new information I'm going to be able to bring forth that's going to change anyone's mind. So I would ask that you make a decision, either yes or no, so we can move on.
I wasn't going to comment again, but I will comment after that, because I don't want to be characterized. It's unfair to characterize people who wish to postpone as people who don't want to do anything about this. That isn't true. I am trying to do the best thing, move us along, do this as what I believe spending this money. I'd rather have the $30,000 to spend on different ways with recruiting minority teachers. To be honest, hang on.
Well, let me change it,
No,
because you characterized me, so let me change it. Don't want to do anything about it tonight.
I do want to do something about it tonight. However, I don't want to do this tonight. That's the difference.
Right. This isn't a magic bullet. Like,
No.
if we vote for them, we care about equity, and if we don't care about equity. You see this, I mean, I've seen it in other places too, they don't work. They haven't done a good job.
But they do work too, though. I've seen it where they do.
Yeah.
Susan?
I call the question. Which takes the 2/3 vote, so we have to vote on that now.
You need a second. You need a second.
Second, yeah.
All right. Second.
Right.
All right, roll call vote.
Mhm.
I'm calling the question. That means we're able to vote now.
All you have to do is say yes or no, we'll vote.
It just ends the discussion, is what it does.
I have to vote, not debate, right?
Mhm.
No.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Motion fails.
No,
No,
it's 4
four
yes.
people, 4
4
yeses.
It needs 2/3.
Okay, so more discussion then. So we didn't hear from Dean. Do you have something, since you voted no, do you have just one?
Well, my concern is that I agree entirely, Eric, with your argument and the need to be able to address personnel issues, particularly the issue of minority hiring, and so forth. I'm also concerned that there's been a lot of opportunity to bring these issues, to at least the Personnel Committee and to discuss them. I'm concerned about the, somewhat maybe unrelated to this, the amount of here is not particularly great, but on the other hand, I find on so many issues in which small amounts of money could satisfy personnel needs get rejected because we don't have it. But every time a consultant comes up, we have it. And I remember particularly, and I'm going to express a little frustration here. I remember particularly when we had the issue of the teacher paraprofessionals. And Eric, you were in the room then, and Peter later. And we had an issue of that really amounted to $800 to satisfy salary issues on that issue. We didn't have the money. Okay? And that, to some extent, we don't have the money. seems to be the answer to issues that are not as immediate. To some extent, they're not as important as this issue. I think we need to get at the equity hiring, but I'm expressing my concern about the ease in which we can spend money to hire consultants or to do this or that, and when we come to often small items, and to even go out of our way to revisit an issue that the committee had decided upon, to try to reverse that little $800 item, and yet 27,000 can go out the window like that. And so it seems to me that we always have the funds, but oftentimes if it's not an immediate priority, we don't do it. On the other hand, Peter, I'm not so sure. I think we need to address this issue. And I don't think we have the capacity in personnel to do that at the present time.
I think we need to try.
What?
I think we owe it to everyone to try.
Well, first of all, there is a little bit of a difference here because this is a one-time thing. When you're talking about hiring staff or giving raises or whatever it is, that's an ongoing expense. So it adds to the total budget in a different way. And I think the issue involved in the situation that you just raised was a little different than that. It was not just money; it was also because there had been an agreement there. I don't really want to revisit that, but I guess that's the main thing I wanted to say is that there's a difference. And I don't recall us hiring huge numbers of consultants either. I mean, we have had some in the past, but not huge numbers. We had, one of the more valuable ones we had, I thought, was when we did the teacher compensation plan. And I don't remember what that cost, but we have used them from time to time, and it was very helpful to have one with that when we did that plan, I thought. And I think I was looking at this sort of similarly, and again, there's a difference between a one-time expense and ongoing, so that's all I'd say about it from that standpoint.
I think the consultant we used for the teacher compensation was a really good example because some members of this board had been working on that process for years and we really did our homework. The administration and this board and the staff and the senior staff and the superintendent, we really did our homework before we hired a consultant to help facilitate that process. I think it's an excellent example of the way we should use consultants once we know what we're doing.
And I'd argue we have been working on that here. It's been a goal over the last few years. We've been working on it, and this is where we are. So I don't really see any reason to continue to discuss it unless people have new points to make that we haven't heard already. Whatever people think.
Well, let me put something out there because, I've been in the school district for a while, have grown kids, have been through, had issues in the school district with racial issues and everything. I don't see a problem with our hiring process because we actually had an African American as a principal here a few years ago. And again, he seemed like he was ousted out because what the school district that I see is unfriendly and unwelcoming. Now, I visited last week on my spring break 3 of the schools here in our district. And what I found was wonderful, engaged admin, teachers, staff. I saw happy children. Mm-hmm. I saw cafeterias cleared and cleaned. I saw no one running hallways. These are the things I saw in our district. Other school districts have issues. They're always in the news. What we need to find out is, because I was not on the board, why did we have that opportunity? We had an African American as a principal, and he's gone. So our hiring process does work. I was really PO'd, and that's probably why I had ran for school board, because I wanted to see in detail We had it and we let it get away. Remember, we had it and we let it get away. He would have been the beacon to bring more minority candidates here. Once he was gone, and a lot of the black community didn't even know he was gone, when they found out, that's when it turned to be unfriendly and unwelcoming. That's what the stigma is for this school district. With this group that we're trying to hire, can give us ways, I'm back and forth with it as well. I would like to see something different. I like to see something happen. However, I know and I can put my trust in HR that they are doing their job. We need to take a gamble. And that we as board members, we have a responsibility and we need to let our constituents know that these are important times here. We have opportunity. We're seeing things at a different angle. I see opportunity. And if it fails, it fails. But at least we tried. And I'm not going to sit here and we here debating and arguing all night because we have our own personal opinions. You have to think about the kids, the staff, the administration, the school district, and the community. That's why we were voted in here for. We need to stop this argument and all this stuff. We need to do something. We had an opportunity about 5 years ago. We let it go. We need to get back on there and get this going here. If we need minority candidates, we need to find them. It's going to be difficult. People, it's going to be difficult. Every school district around Dane County is going through it. We're not the only ones. It's a revolving door. We have teachers switching school districts right now as we speak because they're not getting support. It's an unfriendly environment under teachers. They're not getting the help. Okay? We need to start thinking about that. I would recommend that the board members need to go visit maybe some other school districts. Just pop up there. Visit them, see what's going on. If we're not going to go with them, then we, as a board, I believe we need to start doing our own reconnaissance to see what's going on in these other school districts. Peter.
I agree we should be looking at what's going on in the school district. We should also be looking at what's in our own school district. I also think that spending $30,000 of the taxpayers' money requires good, healthy debate, and we should not shy away from taking the time to do it right, to make sure that we are in the right place, and taking the time to do that. And do it right. This is about doing it right. If we're going to gamble with taxpayers, it's easy to gamble with other people's money. If we're going to gamble with taxpayers' money, we should need to do our own homework first.
What would happen to the $30,000 if it wasn't used for this, Drew or Dan? What happens if the money is there that we have now, we don't use it? What happens to that money?
Goes to fund balance.
Okay.
So right now, fund balance is approximately $6 million. So every year in a $40 million budget, our goal is to come within 1% of that. So $400,000 one way or the other. So at the end of the fiscal year, when the books are done, that will be the difference in the fund balance one way or another.
Well, yeah, I can't remember if I already made this point, so if I did, sorry. But just in the course of listening, I think we also need to remember the Madison School District has an HR department several times the size of our one person and her administrative assistant. And they felt the need to go out and hire this company to help them with this whole process, with hiring more diverse administrators as well as teachers, and then they had additional work that they did and still work with this group. I just think that's one thing we have to remember. So we're not alone in that, in feeling that we need help with this. That's kind of
So a question for all of you.
Right now, the question.
I have a question
Okay.
to all of the board members. Do you think that our community engagement person should do a survey to ask all of our constituents, homeowners, community, to ask them, are we having diversity inclusion issues? And if we were able to hire or do something, what would you recommend? Could we do that?
I wouldn't be in favor of that. I think that's what we're here for. I mean, we're the ones who work with this on a regular basis, and I kind of resent the idea of gambling with the taxpayers' money, because that's not how I look at it. I look at it as responsibly making a decision that we think will help further our goals as a district, and that costs money, and sometimes we have to spend money. That's what we're elected to do. And if you don't agree with it, that's fine, but that seems like a pejorative way to present this to me. And I do resent that. I think I'm just as responsible as you are about making decisions about the taxpayers' money.
I agree. There's a point where our role is governance, and when we go into a non-contested election and 3,500 people say, Susan, I expect you to research this and to make a good decision for our community. At that point, I need to do that, and I need to step forward. And having been here through a lot of the work that we did, including Charlie Ellis being here, who came from Memorial High School, and having known him in college and the things that he tried to do, again, the piece they're bringing is having a good feel for doing this work in other districts. How do we approach them? Who do we involve? Eric's very thoughtfully looked at, it may not be quite comprehensive enough. Let's fix this so it's very comprehensive, very collaborative. And for gosh sakes, let's just do it and get some feedback so we can move forward.
I forgot the question on the table.
The question on the table is the postponement. The question is postponed. So has no comments, we can vote on that.
So no more comments. Do we need to go ahead and vote on postponement?
Yes.
Roll call vote.
No.
Yes.
No.
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 Yes.
No.
The noes have 5.
So now we go back to this.
So we go back to the original motion. Did we vote on the amendment yet, Eric?
Yes.
Yeah, we did.
Yes,
Okay,
we did.
okay, we did. Sorry. So now we're back to the original motion. Got it. Okay. Which is to approve the contract.
Do we need a roll call vote, or do we just?
It doesn't have to be.
I just want to address some remarks. You know, I've been I feel a little affronted, sir, on kind of being accused of maybe being a racist on this issue. Okay, because no, I'm serious.
Okay. Well,
I'm serious. I have asked on the Personnel Committee to begin looking at this issue as an equity issue. I have an item there to try to bring our teaching staff to be at least to approximate the minority dispersion in our district. I would also support hiring minority administrators, but they also have to be competent and qualified. Okay, and your assumption earlier, but we can talk about it another time. You can have lunch, okay? Because I think I can provide some information to you that could help inform you, so that you do not make that charge. Maybe assume that I was responsible for that entirely. Okay. I have worked as a high school teacher, passing the. I carried an assembly district in California, led the assembly district in California for open housing in the state constitutional amendment. Okay, in an area that would otherwise be pretty hostile to it. At the Department of Public Construction, sir, I had to lead. I led the statewide implementation of Title IX when the previous female state superintendent ducked the issue, and I was asked to do it. it was Title IX, we're women. But as soon as the women issues came up, blacks came in and the gay and lesbians and every other group. As I told you at one of our meetings with some consultants, that Chapter 118.12, under which the investigation under that the district is undergoing now, was a product of that. So people like yourselves or the complainants in our case here could file a case against the school district and try to get some resolution outside of that. I believe this ought to be. We ought to have a strong equity position. But I don't think we have, and I don't think we have the capacity here to do it. Okay? Maybe we're getting the will, but we don't have the capacity. My other remark was probably an aside that didn't deserve to be said. But I find it's often too easy to hire a consultant to do something when we have not really taken at least the first steps to do that on our own. Okay? That's what I'm saying. I don't want to debate that. But I feel personally affronted by your remarks, okay? Okay.
Well, I didn't call you no racist. I didn't call anyone a racist. I just said my piece about what we had.
No, I felt that.
I didn't say anybody's name. I didn't say anyone in here is a racist. I said my piece. Susan.
Could I just clarify, Dan? Isn't equity a major part of our strategic plan right now?
It is.
Don't we have committees working in every building right now on equity? Excuse me, Dean. And don't we have a personnel person that attends? We have a community committee that had a great discussion last night. We're working on this, but we need to have somebody come in, do a thorough analysis, get input from everybody. These are the people like you, Dean. If you started to list the times you would run out as a consultant and provided assistance to a school district in the areas where you have incredible knowledge, you couldn't count that on 10 hands. So this is a point where we've identified a little need to go forward and to get some help. So I'm saying, let's get the help. And let's see if we can implement some of the suggestions and integrate it in our strategic plan with our teachers, with our buildings, with our administration, with our kids. Let's give it a shot.
All right, we go vote for the
approval of the service agreement.
The agreement as amended. Because now we've approved the amended. So.
All in favor? All in favor?
Nay.
Let's roll call.
Let's do a roll call vote. Yeah, roll call vote.
Are we voting on the main motion?
Yes. Correct.
Yeah.
Which is to approve the agreement with the Alma Advisory Group to provide support for recruitment and hiring review as amended.
Okay, we got a yes?
Derek's
no.
No. Yes.
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 No.
Yes.
The yeses have it.
Now I need to vote.
All right.
Yeah.
Do we need to take a quick 5 minutes?
Yes.
Yeah, that sounds
All
good.
right. Just take 5 minutes.
Uh,
Well, okay, we'll get back,
I'll tell you the
go
story.
back into, we're gonna go to, possible action item number 3, T4K provider contracts for 2019 to 2020. Yes, sir.
I move approval of the T4K provider contracts for the 2019-2020 school year with the Kids Safari Learning Center, Learning Ladder Preschool, and Child Care and Immaculate Heart of Mary as presented.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
What kind of you go?
Next is the student fee schedule for 2019-2020, Freshman Jumpstart Summer Orientation.
So if you recall, last week, or last board meeting, we had the entire fee schedule for approval, and it's kind of we thought it was going to be kind of a procedural vote. It was the recommendation to just freeze all fees. And then I think there's some really good dialogue about, do we really need a fee for this specific program? So in the time, since our last meeting, we've kind of revisited that. Our long-term goal is to reduce, and eventually we'd love to eliminate all student fees. Statutorily, boards have the right to charge certain fees. Many, many years ago, most districts didn't, and then as budget constraints came in, boards incrementally added that. I think we do a really good job of really trying to identify families in need that is a hardship and to waive fees. We know that's not 100%. And so when I mentioned earlier tonight my report with the last the state education conference, and the one superintendent from a smaller rural district, when I talked about their equity needs maybe a little bit different than ours, well, actually one of the things they were able to accomplish this year was to eliminate all student fees completely. Now, one of their challenges was a lot higher poverty rates than we have in our district. And so, so as much as that's our long-term goal, to be honest, we don't have a strong recommendation. We definitely want to keep the program going. And so we think in the long term we need to do continue to look at a long-term strategy, and definitely next year our hope is to come in with perhaps a reduction or a rationale for why we're not ready to do that yet. So in this one, Principal Brost has had follow-up discussions with the folks that are running it, and we certainly want to make sure that we have the revenue to do that. So what we've determined is if we were not to charge a fee, we will make sure it's in the budget. But I guess there's really three considerations, and I, to be honest, could support all three. One would be to leave the fee in as is for another year, with the idea that and the commitment that we are really going to closely examine and really work hard to make sure we're identifying students, that this does not create a barrier. One option would be to reduce the fee, and so we increase the school budget portion for part of it, but kind of an incremental, and the other is to go all the way in and waive it. And I like to see that, but I'm also a little uncomfortable with just kind of making a quick decision about that without really having that long-term, plan in place. So I know my job is to make recommendations. This is one that is a kind of a complex issue, and I think we could, go whichever way the board supported. And Principal Brost can certainly add any comments or answer any questions that you might have as well with this.
Principal Brost, did you have any comments, anything?
I did spend some time with Nicole Northhesher just checking in, and she believes that the fees are in a place right now where she feels like the program is running about as lean as it can and still have the things that they need for the team building and things they'd like to do with students. So she feels like in terms of overall cost of the program, after running it for years, it's about as efficient as they can make it. They do work hard to identify kids. I just was copying an email today where she was reached out. In fact, they reached out to her, Student Services from GDS, about Jumpstarts coming up. We want to identify kids who are on free and reduced or families who may have need to make sure we're working with you on those. So she's already communicating with GDS about that. She doesn't have strong things either way. She knows the program will be supported. She does feel, I tend to agree, that there is some buy-in by families and by students when there's a fee in terms of getting registered on time, her being able to plan and all that, that it's not just if you show up it's free and your student kind of is there. And she feels like that's some incentive. She knows that's not a great reason to have a fee, but she feels like that does make it a little bit more of a priority for families to plan and make sure their students there and to get their kids registered when there's a little bit of a financial investment.
And you can pay that fee through Infinite Campus, correct? Is it set up that way?
I don't know the answer to that, but most of them are set up that way. But
is it set up okay?
Do you think that there would be a buy-in if the fee was reduced? Because that would still mean that there's a commitment level.
Yeah, I don't know what that number is. We know we didn't have a conversation about that, but that was just part of their thoughts, and I think there is some sense to that. But yeah, I don't know what is that number. What the whole cost of the program is a part of it, I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you have the say like the last 4 years of how much, each freshman class had paid the past 4 years, so we can get like a graph to see what the, like 85, 90% students. So.
About how many kids are waived, you mean, versus?
Yeah.
I don't know if she's kept track of that data, but she may have it. I mean, she does it every year. I don't know if she hangs on to it.
Okay.
But I don't know if there's been a consistent pattern there. I'm guessing it's in the ballpark. It doesn't move a lot, but I'm guessing because I haven't looked at it.
Okay. Peter?
And just be clear, you're now proposing a $50
Yes.
fee? That's down from 300.
No,
I'm sorry, what was
No, it
it?
was always 50.
It's
It
been
was always
50.
50.
It's
Oh, it's always
50.
50.
Yeah.
Okay. Why did I think it was a higher number? Okay, 50, it's always 50. All right.
Just to remind the board where we're at, you approved the fee
Uh-huh.
schedule without
Without
this.
that, yeah.
So at this point, there is no fee.
Right,
You
yeah.
take action.
So go ahead, Susan.
No, you go.
Well, I was going to make, I like the idea.
Andrew gets the call.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Thank you. I was going to call for a motion to have the fee reduced to, rather than $50 to $25. As
Make a
kind of
motion.
compromise. That's, my motion is to reduce the freshman Jumpstart summer orientation fee from $50 to $25.
Second?
I'll second that.
Second. Discussion? Susan?
Jared, what's the total cost of the program?
So expenditure-wise, we spend just shy of $15,000 and bring in approximately $8,000. So the real cost to the district is about $7,000.
Okay, but the total cost of the program is?
It's just shy of $15,000.
So this would add about $3,500 to it.
Seven.
Yeah.
Seven?
So right now, the difference between what we collect in revenue and the expenditure is about $7,000. So then if we move from 50 to 7, you would do at approximately $3,500 to that 7.
Would elimination of the fee affect the budget in a way that there might be a recommendation not to have the program?
I think we're committed to having the program.
Okay. You'll find it somewhere.
It's, with zero-based budgeting, it just becomes a priority. And
Okay, so we had a motion and second to reduce to 25. Any more discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
No, just only because I feel like we don't have any reason for, we don't know how the costs work out.
Well, I don't
The ayes have it.
And I don't want to fee at all.
Right, well,
I'll take that.
that's fine.
Okay, ayes have it.
Sounds like it'll work, as long as we'll know how it works, we're fine.
Okay, motion carried. Policy revisions, second reading.
So these are on here so we could do this in one motion, so I guess I'd ask first if anybody has any questions on either of these. We went through the student representation at board meetings and the school calendar one at last. We went through all this at the last one, but I'll just start off with a motion and we'll see if that works. So I would move approval of the new policy 0141.1, which is the student representative policy, and revised policy 8210 as presented, and to delete from policies language mandating creation by the superintendent of administrative guidelines.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Consideration of offer to purchase real estate.
Okay, so before you is, as it stated, the offer to purchase. This represents the property adjacent to Glacier Drumlin School, just to the south of the property the district already owns, more specifically for the new school site. So it's just over 14 acres, and so this offer to purchase it has two contingencies. One is upon board approval tonight, and then the second is approval at a special meeting of the electors, which will be next up on the agenda. The details of the offer to purchase are something that the board has worked on negotiating, and they're contained within that offer.
And this is the property that we've discussed earlier?
Yes. Yeah.
That was negotiated?
Correct.
And the only question I had is, with the environmental questionnaire, it's here, but we don't, but my understanding is they don't send us the answers to that till after they get an offer from us. So if there was something egregious, which I guess isn't likely since we had soil borings done, I mean, where would that leave us, for example? If it turned out there was gasoline there, for example, clean up.
I'm pretty certen that's one of the contingencies, that if there's anything in there that
I read through it and it wasn't totally clear to me, but okay, that's fine. Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. All right, then I'll move approval to, I move to approve the vacant land offer to purchase as presented.
I'll second.
Second. Discussion?
Oh, just for the record, that it's 14.771 acres. It's at a price of $55,000 an acre for a total purchase price of $812,405.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Authorization of special meeting of the electors.
Okay, so it's a quite lengthy motion. I think you could just read into the record as presented. But it carries the same weight as an annual meeting. It's just a special meeting, and the board does have the authority to call such a special meeting. And anytime the board is seeking to acquire property, it does require approval of the electors. And so we're recommending that the board call a special meeting on May 22nd. That would give time for all the legal notices that we need to put in place to have such a meeting. And this would be the only agenda item on that particular meeting. So just as a clarification, that May 22nd initially was meant to be just prior to a regularly scheduled board meeting at 7, but based upon the approval of the meeting schedule, we no longer have a board meeting on May 22nd, so it'd be a standalone meeting on that evening, whichever is second.
Would that be in Monona or Cottage Grove?
It'd be here at the district office. Is the recommendation.
Is there a motion to?
I move.
Sure, we don't have to read the whole thing.
I move that we hold a special meeting of the electors of the Monona Grove School District on May 22nd at 6 p.m. as presented.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Facilities planning update.
Okay, so in your board docs are just the procedural things that have happened over the last 2 weeks. Since the last time we discussed it. And so there were 2 items just added today. So if you did not have an opportunity to read through that, and specifically it's related to the sustainability discussion that we briefly had earlier. So you have 2 documents. One is a worksheet about projects that could be completed in order to get LEED certification. And then the second document is a cost summary in order to do those projects. So at this point, our goal is our end goal is not necessarily the certification, but it's to really do the right decisions about the project. So we're looking for things that are, related to sustainable energy, that are smart, that are going to reduce and have long-term energy savings, as well as environmentally friendly. So the process that we've gone through thus far, we've had 2 meetings: an introductory meeting to explain to us the LEED process and what this is about, and then a follow-up to be a little bit more specific about these potential items, what those costs would be, what would be the initial thoughts about the benefits. And so there are, in that checklist box, you'll see 3 columns The first column, green, are yes, we should do that no matter what. Those are good practices, those are energy efficient things, and so those are just a given that are part of the original plan design of the new school. The second column with the question mark are the ones that we have to make decisions about. Is there a cost benefit? Is it something that we want to do that maybe the payoff is not there, but again, it's more environmentally friendly and is the right thing to do. And then the third column are the no's that just are not feasible. For instance, some things just don't apply to us. It's when you're doing projects perhaps in urban areas and so on are some of these things. And so, so to help us through that decision-making process, both EUA and Findorf have individuals that are their sustainability experts that have been part of the team. And then more recently, what Jared has helped coordinate is the idea that we think we might need some outside assistance with this, with expertise. I hate to use that consultant word again, but this one is a group that you're very familiar with, that's Mckinney Group, and that's what they specialize in. And so Jared's been in conversation with them throughout this past, really year and a half, and we've done this planning to look at, might there be a place that we can continue that relationship with them in a way, that is cost effective, but is going to help us, either save money or to make sure we're making the right decisions. And so we're working on a proposal, and I think we're fairly confident we're likely to come back to the board with some sort of proposal to engage Mckinney to help us in this. So the things that we're looking at are, number one, the consulting part would be to help us make the right decisions on this. Not that there's not trust with the consultants, that we already have from EUA and Findorf, but really a third party on that to really, who has that expertise as well to help us really make the right decisions. One of the things that, specifically that we've talked about that regardless of certification, that's really important is the idea of commissioning. And with the idea that as you're putting in your systems, to have a third party come in to make sure once they're installed, are they really operating at peak efficiency? And are our staff trained properly to make sure that we're utilizing them? And that's something that, by all accounts is the right thing to do. And yes, the folks that we would hire to put in that system do that work. Clearly be better to have a third party, and Mckinney again has that expertise. So we're looking at them putting together a proposal to do that work. That's something we would do regardless. So it's the idea of having that third party expertise. And then some of the other pieces would be really more the consultant of helping us make the right decisions. And there definitely are opportunities for some cost savings as well with some of the work. So, so that's kind of a big picture summary of that discussion. Like I said, Jared's been working on it in much more detail. Today was the first opportunity I had in a while to sit down with them, lots of questions to try to really understand what it is that they would be doing. So if you have more specifics, I'm going to let Jared try to answer that, particularly about the money part of it and the costs and where that fits in and so on.
Was there any questions for Jared?
It's just one. So we could do all that and not go for the lead certification if we wanted to, too.
Right.
I had no idea that was that expensive.
Yeah. So I think what we know is,
but I'm not saying,
a number of these things we believe are going to be good practices we should do.
Right.
And it might give us just a few points short of getting the certification. So then the question is, do you spend extra money just to get the certification? And our thought is no. As much as it might be nice to say we're a LEED certified school, if it really is paying money just to say that we're LEED, and it doesn't make sense. But I think there's also a reasonable chance that, these are good projects to do, that we might reach that level of certification. That's the right thing to do as well.
Right.
And that's where we're looking at, I think, Mckinney perhaps being the group to really help us with that decision making. So as far as the board involvement in this, we have talked about the next time that would be good to get together a workshop would be mid-May. And to me, this would be a really important topic to have to, for you to engage in dialogue on that and really be involved in that decision-making process with us on that. But what would be helpful for us, I think, tonight as far as feedback is just kind of confirmation that, yes, we're going down the right path here. Again, we're not to the decision-making point, but as we start to prepare the information that we need for that decision-making, I think it goes without saying, anything that we do that has eventual payback for energy efficiency. It's kind of a no-brainer. But then the real challenge is what sorts of things that may not have the payback, but that are environmentally sound, that are still kind of, I'll use the term right thing to do.
Right.
Where's that threshold for the budget piece of that, and how, and what are those items? And that's what we're trying to go through now, so when we bring those to you, you can be, really well informed and provide, so you can make, provide good feedback on that.
Are we taking full advantage of all of the sustainability energy issues, or do we have to cut it back because there's constraints of cost or constraints kind of thing?
At this point, we haven't cut anything back. So
we're maximizing our potential.
We would like to.
For the building and acreage that we have and so forth.
So as far as the budget goes, okay, the referendum was for $57 million. We had the initial cost estimate of the new school at, I should know this off the top of my head, I think it was like 33.5 is what we kind of settled on. We had the deferred maintenance items, about 14.8 million, and then whatever was left was going to be for renovations for instructional spaces. And the process here is that if we have to make any adjustments for the new school and to do some things that might be a little more expensive, we can do that. And that decision will be made first. And then the idea is that whatever's left at the end, for the renovation. But the school has to come first. The deferred maintenance has to come first. Those are for sure. And then some of the renovations are kind of a nice to have type thing. They're all important, but probably less important than these. So that's the approach that we're taking right now with that, and just a lot of information gathering. And so if you would, again, this document is just uploaded today. Please take a look at it and kind of get a feel for that, and so that when we come back, you can come back with questions about what is this, and so on, so you are really clear about these projects. The biggest one right off the top is the main, source of heating and cooling. I mean, glacial junction, is a geothermal system. That's what we're right now examining. Is that still the right system for the new school as well? And that will be probably the first big decision. Is just confirming, that piece. And that one is both. It could have, savings as far as money, but it may or may not be a long-term, the amount is what we want to know, and that's, again, if we work with Mckinney, they can help kind of verify that, but that's also then has that environmental component about, if it's cost neutral, would we prefer to do that, of course, versus the traditional boiler system and so on, and those are the types of things we really want to hear from the board. That I think I know where you're at, but we want to make sure that we're all on the same page on that. So I guess I would, just if you have any just general thoughts about the process, or even after you leave tonight about, okay, I've got a ton of questions on it, let's make sure we address these coming up. Please, start giving us that feedback so that we can make sure we have the information we need.
I have a question. I think, from my perspective, you could keep me informed or us informed on the basis of was it McKinsey you're working with on the sustainability type of things, or whoever you're working with? What's our maximum, optimal thing we could do? What's the cost? And that could help us shape it down as they make construction decisions and that sort of thing. Because we probably, you can't fill up every corner and every acre out there, obviously.
Yeah.
But where can we get the biggest bang for the buck, I think, is the key to it.
And I think one of the things we talked about too that we really need some help with is the idea of the solar. That we know that is becoming much more cost effective. There's also grant opportunities, and that's one thing that McKinney does offer support in grant writing. I think I also mentioned that we've talked to a number of folks from the Monona Sustainability Committee that have been awesome about being willing to help us, with some of those connections and help us find those things. But then to put that together, we want to make sure we don't have any missed opportunities.
Have you or they worked with the State Treasurer's Office on grants on that yet?
Not yet. We haven't done.
Because the assistant to the State Treasurer, I think I told you, lives in Monona, and wants to cooperate in the grant.
Yeah.
And she helped with the city on their project.
So, I mean, it's really we do have a number of local residents that have a lot of expertise and time, and so, again, that certainly is very much welcome to have those conversations and point us in the right
But
direction.
that treasurer's office has the pot of money.
So they don't have any money for staff because no one is ever there.
No, because it's a two-person
It's a
office.
two-person office. It's her, her assistant, and down in the basement.
I know.
And they're in the lowest, yeah.
That's right.
But they want to give it away.
They could return some phone calls then.
He's not there to answer their phone, though, probably.
Oh, I just thought of one other thing, because I appreciate, being brought up before about the partnership with McKinney. The new school is basically right on the boundary between McKinney and Alliant. So it's not finalized yet, but there's a reasonable chance we're going to end up working with Alliant, but that will be determined, first of all, we have to have this property acquisition go through, and then we'll have the exact site of the school, but.
They have a boundary line that goes through.
Yeah, it's got, I'm trying, I can't.
The boundary line actually runs, the Blair runs right along runs through the corner between the two properties that we own right now.
Oh, yes.
And
so Glacial Drumlin's in Alliant. The the Notstad property previously paid their bills with McKinney.
And that's still going to be the bulk. I'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're gonna have to know somebody at the line then. Let me see what kind of contacts I have.
I would comment on that McKinney has better net metering terms, right? They do $100,000 watts per meter. Alliant does 20,000 watts per site. So if we can work with McKinney, I'd rather do McKinney.
I think I can say this, that is the feedback we've gotten from the groups that we're working with, that it would be preferable to work with McKinney.
Yeah.
Any more discussion? All right. Future meetings. Got the policy committee meeting on the 29th. We have a special board meeting 6 o'clock May 1st.
And what's that topic?
Yeah, so we'll send out an update to everyone on that. That's a personnel issue. We'll send a reminder on that. And then we'll get an update now that the board's approved the regular meeting schedule. Actually, a couple of these, or one of those won't be on there. So we'll make sure Joyce will get out a confirmation.
So is that, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, the regular board meeting will be.
So the next regular one will definitely be May 8th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But May 1st, we have special.
It will, yes.
Yeah, it's special.
So it will get a confirmation out to everyone.
All right. Someone to make a movement to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Discussion?
No, you don't discuss. You don't discuss an adjournment motion. They're non-discussable.
All in favor?
Aye.